So when you work in intelligence, you develop these buckets in your head. I don't know if that's how everybody does it, but it's definitely how I did it. And I've heard that from a lot of people. You just get these buckets of like things I can talk about with this person and things I can talk about with that person, things I can talk about at home, blah, blah, blah. And you have all these buckets, this compartmentalized information in your head. And so when I left working for security and intelligence, I created this big bucket of things I can never talk about, right? Person, permanently bound to secrecy, never talk about these things. They went in this bucket and they stayed there. And it's really interesting to me how I see over time, because of declassification or advances in technology, things are slowly coming out of that can never talk about bucket and are now part of the public realm. So when I was working in Canada's Foreign Signals Intelligence Agency, right from the beginning, one of the things that was totally hush hush was, even within the building, was the concept of what the Five Eyes was doing in cyber effects. And even the term, it was all shadowy and nobody really talked about it. And sometimes you'd hear something over lunch or in a meeting, but like it was really neat to know cyber effects, cyber effects, cyber effects. And cyber effects are basically just using the internet to create an effect of some sort, right? So things like emptying a terrorist bank account, was a cyber effect. And it was completely hush hush. So imagine my surprise a couple weeks ago. I'm having lunch with a friend of mine who works at GCHQ, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, what's up? How you doing? What are you up to these days?" And he's like, "Actually, I'm working for this new organization called the National Cyber Force. This is in the UK. And we're doing cyber effects." And I was like, "Oh, like, should you be telling me this? I don't have my clearance anymore." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, it's completely public." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So, like, times have completely changed, right? And I mean, on this front, it really makes sense. So, when I talk about cyber effects now, it's anything that you would imagine you would use the internet to do, like combating disinformation or disrupting systems that are used by adversaries or terrorists. So for the UK, this organization called the National Cyber Force, they do things that are they disrupt activities that are posing a threat to the United Kingdom. And they'll work in conjunction with the military and other intelligence organizations. Like, they're not usually one-off efforts. And I wrote down some really interesting things that they do. They disrupt cybercrime, they disrupt terrorist command and control, they influence adversaries away from doing bad things. They expose hostile activity and hostile networks. They change adversaries' perception of the operating environment. And they try to undermine the ability of the information systems and the information that adversaries use to function effectively. And it's super interesting stuff. And now the fact that they do it is public knowledge. And they're completely, now obviously they're not open about, "Oh, we went after this adversary in particular," but they're open about the fact that they do this kind of work and they are building these capabilities. And I think this is really important because admitting it is itself a deterrent, right? You can't have your government, like, we all know that cyber is in some ways like the Wild West, right? There's lots of stuff happening on there. We know, like, ransomware, malware, cyber attacks, like all this stuff is going on all the time. And you don't want your government just to be like, yeah, don't worry about it, we're on it. Well, how are you on it? So the UK has this National Cyber Force, NCF, that is starting to make more public the kinds of activities that they're doing, the rationale behind them, and also the structure in which they operate and how they are following UK law and respond to government priorities. And it's all coordinated efforts and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's a public-facing document. It's really interesting. The link isn't clear. It's not like you can just go to like gchq.co.uk, but I'll see about posting it in the comments. And I think this is a really important part of the work of intelligence agencies these days. I've spoken about it before, but making public what you can, right? You can't ask your governments, the public, to keep funding you and believing in you if you don't give them a reason to, if you don't show them what you're doing and show them some of your wins, and talk about the reality of the threat space and the reality of the space that you're working in. So it's really interesting stuff. I'm super happy it's public now so I can start talking about cyber effects more, because they are really interesting and they are a valuable tool for some intelligence agencies, not all intelligence agencies, do effects, but force some of them to start shaping the environment a little bit better and working with some of their domestic partners to have bigger successes in terms of their outcomes. Anyway, if you have any questions or thoughts, let me know. Otherwise, I hope everyone's doing wonderful.